That afternoon, we had booked a river rafting session through our hotel, so we set off for the Zanskar River, a tributary of the Indus River. Unbeknownst to us, river rafting as a tourist activity is most often done in the morning, when the tide is lower and the current calmer. Snow runoff means the icy water levels are rising throughout the day. We would be accompanied by two rafting guides, Verinder, who would paddle with us in the rear of the raft, and Pradeep, who would be kayaking solo ahead to guide us. Following some brief instructions, the six of us, Verinder and Pradeep, would set off on the raft. Little did we know that fate had brought us, mere strangers, here, at that moment, to that river. As fate would have it, you're looking at the last images of all 8 of us alive.
Everything was going fine at first. It was about 20 minutes in, so it was quite a surprise when the force of the water was able to overturn the entire raft. Pradeep abandoning his kayak to help Verinder assemble us atop the upside-down raft was in hindsight a huge mistake. I think the kayak would have given him better mobility, and the raft should have been flipped upright. When I realized that TJ had been dragged away by the current in the freezing cold water, I truly thought it was only a matter of time till we could no longer see the bobble of her helmet on the water. Pradeep dove into the water to rescue TJ, and we watched the current dragged her to then suddenly appearing right in front of us. Even winning the lottery doesn't require as much luck as TJ had. Our focus had been entirely on TJ, so it was a huge shock to see Pradeep floating in the water, only his life jacket visible. I have no medical training. I just did what I saw people do on TV, bumping down on Pradeep's chest with a sort of rhythm. When he spat up water, our relief was immense, but his instant reaction was to tell me to let him go. TJ was still hanging on the edge of the raft, most of her body in the icy water. Take a quick glance at something blue in the room you're sitting in now. That's the color her skin was turning. Elroy holding her, knowing that any slip would send her into the water again. Shweta encouraged us to give it one final effort and bring TJ on board. Running on adrenaline, we used our last ounce of energy to retrieve TJ. Pradeep started to have some kind of seizure, shouting illegibly and flailing his limbs about. But then it became clear that it was literally being sucked out of him.
When you're looking at the end, your life in the balance, your mind is clear. When the odds are stacked against you, there is nothing left to lose. There were several twists of fate on the raft, turning points upon which all our lives depended. We didn't know how the gavel of life would fall. We could only hope for what seemed the least likely outcome, our survival. Sometimes, for reasons unknown, what seems impossible can happen. But not everyone shares the same fate. Life can be as cruel as it is kind. Life can fall in the dark shadow of fate.
The realization that our prospects of survival were at most bleak started to set in. We're on an upside-down raft, guided by only one oar. And as we approached each set of rapids, there was an expectation of us all being tossed back into the water, and this time, for good. My hands at this point were frozen stiff, not even being able to bend the joints of my fingers. The exhaustion of intense activity at that altitude is comparable to running a marathon at sea level. Verinder was trying his best, but the task of steering an upside-down raft with one oar seemed beyond any human ability. As the waters became calmer, Verinder was able to get us close enough to the bank on our left. Getting off the raft was a massive relief, but the elation was short-lived as we realized we were marooned on the opposite bank from the road. It's the bank you see in the distance on screen. When Verinder retrieved the mobile phone from the raft's dry bag, we regained some hope. Vehicles passing on the other side didn't seem to understand our predicament. Virinder's phone call to the rafting company was slightly alarming, as the manager of the company instructed Verinder not to call the police or the military. The rest of us continued to keep our focus on the opposite bank, where our driver later appeared, having seen our gear floating unmanned further up the river. Several guides from the rafting company paddled across to our bank and made further attempts to revive Pradeep, but it was much too late. To our dismay, we were told to paddle ourselves back to the opposite bank with the aid of 2 guides. So Elroy and I grabbed an oar each, and with our last ounce of energy, assisted the guides in getting the raft across.
You know, the weirdest thing was, both my slippers and a third slipper fucking caught my right ankle. I felt like an octopus was pulling me down.
And I was asking Gaurav,
So
what do we
I
do?
couldn't fucking get up because the fucking slippers were tied.
At one point, I had one slipper on my foot still, and I was holding onto 2 oars because I thought, at some point we'll actually recover. The water will get calmer, we'll flip over, and we'll have a couple of oars. It never fucking happened.
That never happened. Exactly my point. I thought, I mean,
It's
every
crazy,
single
because
time.
when I got
I was
stuck
like,
in,
these
it
guys
will control the situation somehow, but nothing happened.
I was
They
like
don't do
scared
it.
because, I could see the 3 of y'all, Elroy, Abhishek and Gaurav next to me. And I couldn't, as much as I was trying to keep my head out of the water, I just couldn't. It was just pulling me down,
Good.
And I remember
At least
Abhishek-
5 of us were holding it.
Yeah, that's true.
If all of us are scattered,
In the beginning, I was thinking, maybe I don't even need to hold. We'll get all right. We'll be fine in a minute.
Yeah, I also thought so. I didn't have any rope when I went down, but then I somehow caught a rope. I don't know how it
You don't
came
even
up.
know how to swim. And I was like, I couldn't see Preet, I couldn't see TJ. I'm just looking.
We
I
were
don't
together
know.
and we couldn't see you all, and I was like, where are these guys, man? Are they still under the water or what?
but she kept her calm at least,
Yeah.
Help, but he went onto the raft and I went under it for the second time. And that time I just couldn't get out because there were too many people on top of the raft.
Right. Even I was under the water, but I was not under the raft, I guess. So I couldn't see you. Before we were like together, but then I couldn't see you only.
It didn't occur to us until later that when Verinder dove into the water to get Pradeep, it was just the 6 of us, no oars, on an upside-down raft. A recipe for a certain disaster.
Dude, sorry, she came close, but
This is it. Not gonna make it. It's fucking scary.
It was actually very scary. Seeing you, floating like that, alone.
We were all fucking
And I
out of
couldn't
energy.
move, like I was
yeah, she was like dead weight.
I was just, I just couldn't. And because of the life jacket, it had come to here, I couldn't breathe.
Yeah.
Now we know why they have to be tight. Yeah, I don't understand how he became unconscious. That's the most puzzling thing.
Sorry?
He was fine and then he became unconscious. How does that happen so fast? Unless like someone said he had a panic attack or something like
I
that.
think he had an attack because I don't know, this is too shocking.
What he was saying, blabbering, was definitely signs of a panic attack.
Because he was with us, teacher, remember? Both the guys were with us,
Exactly.
right?
Yeah, they were both on
They were
top.
with us.
And then one went up and then,
Pradeep went up and then the other guy went up.
right. Then we were down still, but
Yeah,
then
I was down and then I
still
went under.
somebody pulled
Yeah.
me up. And then we were not there.
I think he
And
had a panic attack.
till that time, both the guys were fine, I mean. Nothing
I don't
was
think
there.
he was expecting such a bad thing.
It must be shock.
Get that.
कौन सा वाला था जो ऊपर बैठा था वो गया कि नीचे जो इधर बैठा था
नीचे वाला जो छोटा बोट में था
पतला वाला
हाँ पतला वाला पहले वो ठीक था बाद में कुछ हुआ
पता नहीं क्या हो गया, हमें भी
हाँ।
समझ में नहीं
आपको
आया.
कहीं चोट लग गया होगा नीचे पत्थर को
हाँ, वही लग रहा है. बहुत बुरी तरह से थप्पड़ लगा था. यार, he was- see, even if he got a panic attack, that does not explain how he was floating all of a sudden.
Yeah, it makes no sense.
It doesn't make any
It
sense.
makes no sense.
He had to have hit his head on something.
You know what I feel? I feel he didn't think we were going to make it. I honestly feel he didn't think we were going to make it. And he was shouting at the other guy, saying, "You're not paddling, you're
Yeah,
not doing
he
this."
said this, that this is the worst thing or something like that. He said something. He said
Situation
something.
can't get worse. I don't think he believed we could make it.
Yeah.
And maybe it was his mind playing with him, saying that I don't want to answer the people if my clients don't make it. So he just ended his life after saving all of us. He's saying, I did my part. I feel that's what it is. Because the words he used were pretty...
तैरते हुए हमारे सामने है एकदम. अब सोचा कुछ गड़बड़ हो गया. फिर थोड़ा फट वहाँ है.
अच्छा हुआ आप आ गए, नहीं तो पता नहीं हम लोग कब तक सोचते.
लौट जाता है ना. गलत जगह में क्या होगा, कहीं पत्थर लग गया. नीचे चट्टान होता है ना, बहुत बड़े-बड़े पत्थर.
So then we're lucky we didn't get hit by rocks.
अब we were seriously down, but the rocks can watch. I think something good will done in our lives someday.
I feel sad for the other 10 guys. They lost their job. This company is going to shut down for sure. At least for a while. At least for a while, it's going to shut down. These guys have lost their jobs. The only thing they could do was going.
हर दफा उसने राफ्टिंग खत्म करके आज पूरा सामान होटल में लगे था. फिर दोबारा जब आ गया ना, तो उसका मौत था.